Okay, looks like we're live. Darius Mitchell, it's my absolute pleasure to be able to talk with you tonight. I mentioned in the blurb I put out for this on Red Mask Group that this was not something that was in the works for a very long time, that we would do this live broadcast. I think we first decided we were going to do this, what, like an hour and a half ago?
Yeah, something like that, you know.
So this is a very impromptu broadcast. I don't know how popularly attended it's going to be, but I'm excited. This is a basically a first foray for me in terms of broadcasting an interview like this live over YouTube. The previous interviews I've put up, I've done them pre-recorded, but you are a guy who eschews the comfortable safety of a pre-recorded interview, and you just jump right in, you dive right in and do it live. Am I right?
You're right. Well, I want to be the U.S. Senator from Massachusetts, so that's a big honor, and I want to prove that I'm worthy of that honor. So, if we have to do it impromptu, let's do it. Anything I have to do to get to, representing this great state.
So tell us about yourself, because I know that you're pretty well known in Lowell, in the beautiful city of Lowell. But for anybody who might be listening to this now or tuning in, after we've wrapped and watching it later, and they're from other parts of the state, they're from maybe Western Mass or anywhere other than Lowell in the suburbs. I'm going to be honest with you, buddy. You might be kind of an unknown quantity to them, because I think most people. I mean, it's still early days, but I would also say that you're one of the lesser known members of the field. So give us a little bit. Give us your life story.
Well, my name is Darius Mitchell, and I live here in Lowell, and I've ran for city council for a couple times, and became I like politics. I have a passion for politics and the direction of the nation. I like history. I like to read about history in Massachusetts, the great figures who came through here, like Frederick Douglass, Abraham Lincoln, and so I got addicted to politics and talking about you know the direction of the country. So I do a lot of writing on social media and stuff like that, and that's my story. I'm originally
What?
Go ahead.
Sure, go ahead.
My father was in the military. I'm originally from Dover, Delaware. He was stationed on Dover Air Force Base. My grandmother lived in Lowell, so I spent a lot of time in Lowell as a kid, and I've lived here for many years now.
What did your dad do in the Air Force?
He was in supplies.
Okay, right on. I actually served in the Air Force myself.
I was born on Dover Air Force Base.
Oh, all right,
Yep.
right on. Uh, we what? Let me ask you if we could switch gears a little bit here. Um, we obviously have a lot of contenders in this field. What would you say? Why? What would you say is the biggest deficit? So of any of the people other than you, right? What is the biggest thing that's missing that you bring to the table that the other candidates don't?
I think I'm a resident of an urban city in Massachusetts, one of the gateway cities, one of the largest cities in the state, and I work hard. I used to work at the day labor, but now I work for a moving company, Sterling Movers. But I work hard, and people in Massachusetts work hard. And when we watch TV, all we hear about is how we're divided. But when I work around the state, I've worked with dozens of entrepreneurs, and we're not that divided. Everybody just wants to make a living for their family and have safe neighborhoods and live the American dream. they want to know that Congress is working for them. You know, if they send you there, it's a privilege, and they want you to work for them. And what I bring to the table is I'm a regular working class guy. I'm a hip hop. I say I'm a hip hop Republican. I'm from that generation where it's not about race. It's about, you know, things we have in common, like family, community. And so we need somebody. Every time elections come through, Lowell's ignored, the urban issues are ignored. And with me, you'll have a candidate who understands those issues, who have been fighting to bring those issues to the forefront for a long time. You know. Yeah.
Understood. So we're joined now by Rachel Miselman, um, of Boston neighborhood TV. Is that correct,
Yeah, it's Boston. It's Boston Neighborhood Network.
Rachel?
Yep, Boston Neighborhood Network. We call it BNN. And
Hi, Rachel.
Hey,
hi, Darius. How are you?
Fine,
And
and you?
good, great. Nice to hear your voice.
You too.
And thank you. And I do Bostonian rap, and it's a blog, a radio show, and a television show, and it's been going for quite some time. So I'm more than happy to join both you guys, and I feel like it's almost like a privilege because a lot of the talk that is done, I don't think it's very useful. I don't think it really hits on any important points. So I'm definitely looking forward to having this exchange with you guys.
well, I think the honor. I mean, I think I can speak for both of us in saying that the honor is all ours. Um,
Oh, thank you.
is it the case that you guys know each other? Because when I mentioned your name, and it could just be that your reputation precedes you, but when I mentioned your
Ah,
name, somebody who might join, Darius said, "Yes, Rachel, gotta have her, bring her on." So,
oh,
is
very
there
sweet. Very
should
sweet.
we
No,
do some
Rachel.
disclosure here? Do you guys know
No,
each other IRL?
well, no. I just know Rachel from Massachusetts politics. She's very passionate. I've met her. I met her a couple of times at the election of the Mass GOP chair last year. I finally met her
Yes.
in person. I follow her on Twitter. I follow her on Facebook for many years. You know,
And I'm
because I
grateful. Thank you. Thank you very
this
much,
isn't
Darius.
this isn't the first time I've tried to run. So I follow Rachel. Yep.
So let's talk about. You said this isn't the first time you've tried to run. Has anybody said to you, "Look, Darius, U.S. Senate, it's a really big office. This is it's a huge undertaking. Why not why not bite off a little bit less, um, up from the apple on this go around?"
People say that, everybody says it to me, but you have to go big or go home. You have to risk. You know, I you have to risk. If you believe in your community, sometimes you have to risk some things that are beyond money. Principle, the type of community we deserve, the type of community they deserve in Dorchester and Roxbury and Lowell and Lawrence, where kids can play outside and be safe without worried about gunfire, and know that their elected leaders are looking out for them, are thinking about the problems that they're going through. And we're trying to solve those problems. We're working for them, not just out there trying to raise money and go to cocktail parties and stuff like that.
Fair enough. What do you think is? Oh, and sorry, just Rachel, so you know, you're a way more qualified and experienced interviewer than me. So even though this
I
is
don't know
my
about
show,
that. You're very sweet.
jump in at any time. But so I
You're
guess
doing a great job. You're doing a great job, really.
I appreciate the endorsement. It means a lot to me. So Darius, let me ask you this then. What would you say is like the biggest thing? So you're talking about solutions. Out of all the solutions that maybe you might uniquely offer, what is the one that people really need to know about if they just knew one thing about you?
That criminal justice, I believe strongly in criminal justice reform in my community, in the urban community. because I see a lot of people who go into jail and they go away for 6 months, they go away for a year, and they come back to society with nothing. And it's like, if we're going to put people in jail, criminal justice reform is about making sure that people who come back into our society have the tools to be successful citizens, productive citizens, because criminal justice, it affects everybody. It affects our public schools. It affects families, and we want to make sure that if we're investing in people to go to jail, when they come out, we want to make sure that we give them the tools to be successful. I mean, that the whole country. That's one area around the country that we lack leadership. And if I'm a senator, that'll be a major part of it because I just know how it affects our community. I see it every day.
Yes, that's actually a huge point. It's I'm glad you're talking about it. I'm glad that Ted, that you asked Darius about it. You putting someone away for a crime that he or she has committed. It's been proven uh, in a court of law. The person's put away. The person has done his time. The person is rehabilitated. That's only part of it. Then you have to plug the person back into the community. The idea is to have people who are active and who are productive, and it's hard. It's hard to go from being in um, going from being incarcerated to being free.
Yeah, you come
You
back to you have a family, you have kids, and
Yeah,
you're just put back, and you're a man or you're a woman, and you want to be productive, and you want to, you know, you you have to have trade. You have to teach more than just a GED. You have to get to people a trade and make them believe that America believes in them. You know,
sure.
Uh, we're out for each other. We're all for each other.
And it's another thing that people fail to understand is, in jail, you have someone who tells you when to get up and when to go to sleep, and you eat at set times, and everything is organized for you. When you get out, when you're released, you're the one who decides what time you're going to get up and what time you go to bed and what time you eat and what you eat. And it's not easy to make that adjustment. I mean, I don't know if people really kind of think about that. And like you said, people also suffer from a real lack of confidence afterwards.
And
you know
and
if if,
current
if, if they don't get that encouragement and training while they're in uh, jail, they have to have something that's going to enable them to make that smooth transition. But it's certainly not easy to go from community to jail and then back to community. And we do need to think harder about that. We need to be smarter. And it's, I mean, what's the point of rehabilitating somebody? Um, because that's the ultimate idea, right? I think most people.
yeah,
Uh,
America, redemption. You can redeem. You always get another chance. You can redeem yourself in America. You can make it in America. You
right.
know, and that's what we want for. That's what we should want for each other. We should cheer. We shouldn't just tear each other down all the time. We should
No.
cheer each other on.
But that's
Yep.
but that's one of the points of the criminal justice system, rehabilitation. And so I think that um, if that's really going to be one of the points, then you really do have to make sure that people are able to function, that they have that assistance, that they have that training that you talked about. Um, I'd love to see all the Republican candidates talk about it, but it's just I feel like there's a big disconnect, and um, it's kind of sad. It's like, why aren't Republicans in the urban communities? I mean, it's I mean,
I
are
know it's
they?
great. Like the opportunity is there. Everybody's just watching. Like, but most people are just like, well, I'm not going to do anything Republican because Trump has the Trump has the reputation of being like all Republicans aren't Trump. You know, Eh, you know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
all Democrats aren't Elizabeth Warren. All
Right.
Republicans aren't Trump. There are independent Republicans who think for themselves. You know,
Right.
and
Do
Well,
you think,
go ahead. Go ahead,
Darius,
please.
Darius, do you think that the Trump presidency is bad for the Republican brand in the inner city?
I think it's I think people focus on I think people focus on him too much instead of focusing on the opportunities. There's opportunities out there for leadership and people to, you look at our congressional seats, and we have 9 Democratic congressmen. We have 2 U.S. senators, but they don't really have any power in Congress. They don't. They don't. It's all Republican down there, so we really don't have a say in the policies that are going on in the country right now. And Massachusetts hasn't elected a person of color to Washington since Edward Brooke in 1966. And so I think the thing right now is who, who is the party of diversity in Massachusetts? Because I think they're both pretty equal, even though one pretends like they're more diverse. But I think who's going to take that mantle? Who's, the urban cities? I'm in Lowell, and you talk to people, and they're not either Democrat or Republican. They're kind of just playing the field, waiting.
So we got a question from Twitter. Jill asks, Darius, what attracted you to the Republican Party?
I think room for growth. I want to grow. I feel that I have something to offer, and I always wanted to run a statewide campaign. I always read about history, historical figures. I'm a big fan of Frederick Douglass, who, was a slave and ended up in New Bedford, ended up working for William Lloyd Garrison and President Lincoln. I'm a big fan of Lincoln. And Lincoln came through Massachusetts after his Cooper Union. And Massachusetts is just historical, It's Charles. When I read about Charles Sumner, what he
Sure.
what happened when he took a beating. What he got beat down by a congressman from South Carolina for speaking out against slavery and those historical events. And then you look at politics today in Massachusetts, and people rarely vote, and we're lucky if we have 2 candidates on the ballot when we go to vote in November. And I think everybody needs a candidate to vote for, someone who understands them, who is just an average person. I know I need that. And, I need we need candidates. And
So I feel like I'm hearing basically kind of two different answers here from you, and tell me if I get this right. So obviously there's a sort of the Republican Party has a pretty rich historical legacy, and you've referenced it pretty heavily. Obviously Abraham Lincoln, the first Republican president, but it seems like what you're also saying here is that in the context of Massachusetts, the Republican Party is option if you want an alternative, because what some people might not know, who maybe if they're from outer state, um, the Democrats have they pretty much have a lock on this state. Is that not correct?
well,
So am I right in thinking that part of it is just that actually, let me ask you this. Let me ask the question this way. This is my impression. My impression is that anybody in Massachusetts who doesn't like the status quo really needs to be operating in the Republican Party, or at least outside of the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party is it's basically a status quo conservator. That's what it does in the context of our Commonwealth. What do you think about that? Do you think that that's true?
well, I think that there's just a lack of growth for the urban. Like you'll never hear Elizabeth Warren say entrepreneurship or home ownership. And I think people in the urban community, they want to hear, they just don't want to hear about, racism and how bad, they're not victims. They work hard. They just want some people to look out for them. And they can do anything any other community can do. But they need a senator who can work with them and believes in them. You know, just calling the president a racist is not a policy.
No,
Yeah,
it's really not,
you,
is it?
and you have to, what do you think about summer jobs for these kids? How much are you going to invest in summer jobs? What do you think about rail from Lowell to Nashua, rail from Boston to Springfield, from Springfield to Hartford? The infrastructure. When the president comes to you and says, I'm going to spend this much money on infrastructure, what are your projects? Those are our projects. We have Keolis, who is a French company running our transportation system, and we know how that's going. I use public transportation. Those are my issues.
Yeah, another weird thing about public transportation here in Mass, the outsourcing is almost, I would say, kind of bizarre because, yeah, you're right. We've got Keolis. Keolis is a French company, but then did you know also that the rail car manufacturer is the government of China? It's not even a private Chinese company. It's a subsidiary of the Chinese government that we contract with to
And
to
can I
fabricate
add to that? Can I add to that? And they sold us a certain amount of cars, and eight of them were broken down, brand new cars, and eight, I believe it was eight of them broke down, were malfunctioned. If that story was out there last year, the new cars that they bought from whoever the manufacturer was, I guess it was China. Eight of the cars were malfunctional.
right, right. Well, you pay for what you get.
Yep.
Pay for
But
what you
that's a
get.
shame,
We get
you
a
know.
we get a, another message from Jill on Twitter. She wants to contend with you that Trump is not a racist. She says that he is too a racist.
He
Um, what,
he
what do you
he.
think about? Let's talk about that a little bit because I heard you
Yeah.
mention Trump. It does seem like there is sort of a boy who cried wolf. I feel like there's sort of a boy who cried wolf effect with charges of racism, especially coming from the left, because I feel like they're so frequent and ubiquitous. Do you think there's any there?
Is he a racist?
Yeah.
He's like a. I think he's more. I don't. I don't know what's in his heart, but he's more like of a Archie Bunker. Like Archie said things that weren't politically correct, and was Archie a racist? It doesn't matter to me if he's a racist or not. Like it doesn't affect. He could feel however he wants. He wouldn't be the first racist president. So I concentrate more on U.S. Senate race. Giving a strong, being able. The president marijuana policy there. I don't agree with that. You know, everybody's worked so hard to bring marijuana to the mainstream. I think he's going in the wrong direction. Companies can't even use get ATM. What they can't even do transactions with credits because banks are scared that the federal government's gonna charge them or something. Like that's a problem that the president really didn't need, and it's so annoying. Like it's just starting problems that you don't even need. Like leave that issue alone because he's gonna lose that issue. He's gonna lose on
So
marijuana.
definitely, you would say that he has some deficits, but you're not. So am I right in interpreting that you're not sold on the racism accusation? You're just
I,
agnostic on it?
I really don't even. I really don't. I do watch it because it's interesting how my circle views it and stuff like that. But I'm more interested in the issues of the day in our community, and who's going to be the next senator of Massachusetts. and how can that person bring value? This is Massachusetts. Any president that wants to be president must respect Massachusetts. I mean, Massachusetts is the leader of New England. For New England to be strong, Massachusetts needs a strong leader, a leader that knows the issues. And Massachusetts is just, it speaks for itself, all the places.
We
It's it.
we really
Oh,
we, we
oh, go
really
ahead.
are sort of the big boys on the block regionally. Obviously, Boston and Worcester are the two biggest cities in New England. But do you think that that's true? Do you think that, from a national perspective, maybe Massachusetts gets short shrift?
Of course, because congressional delegation is all Democrat, and when it comes to electing a president, most of the time, they know it's going to be Democrat. But with our U.S. Senate Republican primary, we have a good opportunity to get candidates out there from different spectrums of American life, and we can discuss the issues. And hey, we might spark interest in us and Massachusetts Republicans in the race because we need a new senator. We need a
We
senator
do.
that everybody knows this, except for maybe the media. And I mean, a lot. You talk to people and you be like, do you? They really are just like they don't like Elizabeth Warren, and it's just like we can do better. We can do better. Massachusetts can do better. It's, that's how I
It
feel.
Yeah. I mean, it has to do better.
It
It
has to.
really. Yeah. I mean, it's really amazing. You know, just how many people don't like her, and I really
I'm not.
feel. Oh, go ahead, please.
I'm not trying to knock. It's just people want substance.
Well, that's exactly right. And you talked about issues, and I don't really think she knows them. And I remember, back when she, was running, and it was 2011, so it was early on. And I asked her a question about education and what she would do to improve education. Because we have a serious problem, for instance, in schools with the funding. Our schools are, the traditional public schools, they're not fully funded. So, for instance, our library, libraries, you would expect a library in every school. That's not what we have. And most of our public schools here in Boston don't have functioning libraries, if you can actually believe that. And so I asked her what she would do to kind of level the playing field, because I explained to her that I had um, what I thought was a good education. I worked very hard. I was able to learn a lot, get a good diploma, get a good undergraduate degree. But I wanted that same opportunity for others. Um, so I wanted to know what she would do. And I said, look, I can email you this question so you can think about it. And she didn't want to think about it. And she seemed almost offended that I had even asked her the question.
It's
Was
kind of
this?
it's
Sorry, go ahead,
go ahead.
Darius.
It's just Massachusetts. Like everybody should, the voters of Massachusetts just have a grand opportunity the day after Labor Day and in November to like send shockwaves across the country and say, you know what, we're back. And anybody that, you know, Massachusetts is back, we're back as leaders. And and that's the opportunity we have. The unenrolls, September, what is it, 4th, November 8th it is, that first Tuesday in November. They have an opportunity to say, you know what, no matter how much money you have, we're Massachusetts, and what the voters say, go. And we can send a message across the country.
Yeah, just it's first Tuesday in November this year is November 6th is general election day.
Okay.
Um, all right, let me pour some cold water here, since somebody has to be the contrarian. everybody. So I guess everybody in this stream, we all kind of agree that Liz Warren is a mediocrity. But is it possible that we're in a bit of a bubble? I feel like she's really the darling of the Occupy, Bernie brocialist set. Like, I think that she has a niche in which, and that niche might be, if we're being realistic with ourselves, it might be a lot bigger than ours, at least in Massachusetts, in which she's very, very popular. Am I am I imagining things, Darius? I mean, we've got to be a little bit realistic about this, right?
Well, no, you have to. I think you have to look at, like, the Democratic Party is supposed to be this party of the minorities and of the urban America. But if you look across urban America, things aren't going too well right now. And you have to say, what? The Republican Party never, every year we hear the Republican Party is going to reach out to urban people. Every year we hear that the Republican Party is going to reach out to minorities. It's going to start talking about kitchen table issues. And we never get it. Everybody, you got the far right and the far right. You got the far left and the far left. And in the middle, there's a leadership vacuum where there's not really a leader. Like, hey, man, we're in this together. This is America. We've always done this together. And so that's what we're missing here, the middle. So
I just want to, go ahead, please, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please, Rachel.
Well, what I wanted to say is this might be an interesting bit of information for people. I think that unfortunately there will be a number of people on the left who will vote for her because she is the Democratic candidate. And so even if they're not necessarily, believe it or not, wild about her, they'll still vote for her. But I will tell you that, some people have been critical of her on the political left, people who call themselves progressives, proudly so, because she is very slow to take a stand on issues. And, you say to yourself, well, what is the problem? Why is it so difficult for you to say yay or nay? A concrete example is the question 2, the ballot question in Massachusetts. Do we lift the cap on charter schools? Now, in the past, I know she was very favorable toward charter schools, but I mean, that's not necessarily saying that, you would be against lifting the cap or you would be for lifting the cap because, I myself, like, I didn't want to lift the cap, but I had reasons, but that didn't mean I was against charter schools. But anyway, the point is that, people said, okay, well, you came up before, you said something, you took a position. What do you have to say now? And I know a lot of progressive Democrats who were kind of disappointed that it really kind of took her a while to say something. And then also with the recent protests in Iran, well, I mean, I guess they're still unfolding, even though, it's not front page anymore, unfortunately. We have to look at foreign press, I guess. But, I thought she was very slow to comment on that as well. I feel like she has a script and she has certain issues and she can just.
Well, it has to be a Democrat versus Republican issue. If it's just who you are as a person, how do you feel about this part of the community or that part of the community? It's easy to just attack, oh, it's a Republican's fault. It's a Republican's fault. That's her script. That's what I feel. But when what do you feel about a certain thing as a person, as a resident of Massachusetts, as a resident of the Merrimack Valley? That's the thing that's lacking, I think. Yep.
Okay, guys. Well, all right. Then let's take this opportunity to break out of that mold, and lead by example. Darius, where do you come down on the two issues that Rachel mentioned? So she talked about charter schools. She talked about foreign policy, especially Middle East foreign policy. I mean, what are your thoughts? Can you give us something a little more concrete than, I guess, what Elizabeth Warren has left us with? Which, I mean, I'm going to take Rachel's word for it that that Liz Warren is flip-flopping on this. I haven't seen what she said about this.
Oh no, I know what Rachel
where do
said.
you stand?
What Rachel said is true. Last year, when the ballot initiative was on the ballot, and Elizabeth Warren said she sort of agrees with charter schools, but she endorsed the other side because that's where a lot of her money comes from. Which you got to understand. But charter schools are good. People are looking for alternatives to education. It takes away from public schools, but it does a lot of good things. Teaches kids different languages at a young age, and parents are looking for just something different. And with
you're strictly in favor.
I'm in favor of charter schools. I've seen the things they've done for families, and people like them a lot.
Okay, and then how do you feel about the, I guess, the Velvet Revolution or the the Persian Spring, the latest sort of color-coded revolution in Iran?
I can't talk that deeply into Iran, but I don't know. Like, we've been in Afghanistan for so many years. We're on the border of Iran there. Foreign policy. I know Rachel is, I believe, Jewish, and she's a big supporter of Israel. But it's just like our feud with Iran has just went on for so many years. Afghanistan is just going on for so many years. Gotten better there. We've sunk so much money into that region. So it's just like we our nation, we have so many problems here in our nation. But it would be nice if sooner or later Iran and America could, because if we're going to invest that much money in troops in Afghanistan, we're going to need Iran. It's just they're on the border, they're there, and we need leadership. That we're all going to need each other. That's my opinion. It's naive. I know.
Would you describe yourself as a non-interventionist?
No, I'm down with intervention, but so when some people have everybody doesn't have good intentions when they intervene. You know what I mean? And if you have good intentions, sometimes it'll work out, but a lot of times it makes things a lot worse. But I'm not a military expert.
You kind of you piqued my interest when you mentioned Israel. Do you think there's might be some daylight between you and Rachel in terms of Israel?
No. No.
Right. Wait a second. Who's echoing? Who's echoing? Somebody's echoing.
Is it me?
Sorry, I think it's me.
All right, we're gonna. No, I just. Hang on a second.
Are you?
All right, I just muted Rachel, and I don't hear the echo. So,
can you hear me,
Rachel? Yeah, I can hear you great.
Yeah.
No. I mean, sometimes on these things you echo. So, Rachel, I'm gonna unmute you, but you got to get that echo under control.
No, I do. Hold on.
All right.
Can you hear me? It ain't me, is it?
I'll do that. Good?
No, it isn't you. I think it was Rachel because I think she came out and then she came back. But I don't hear the echo anymore, so I think we're good. But yeah, so I was asking about Israel. I mean, I understand that foreign policy isn't the focus of your campaign. It seems to me, based on everything you've said, that you're making a case for the primacy of domestic policy at this point in time, which I'm very sympathetic to.
I'm a big proponent of ending the Cuban embargo. I think it's time to end it. It's been 60 years, and we have an embargo that hasn't worked. It's been 11 presidents, 60 years, and we need to think about other policies because all of our allies, people who we spend money with Cuba. China spends lots of money with Cuba, Russia. So why aren't we spending China takes our money and goes spend it with Cuba, and where Americans go to Cuba all the time, and it's time for a new policy.
What do you see as the future of domestic policy in Cuba itself? Do you think that if we normalize relations with them, that it would um, strengthen or weaken the communist rulers?
I think it would. I mean, we haven't tried it yet, but I think it would weaken. I mean, I think it would weaken the regime because it would give people their. Uh, it would give people things that they need to be independent. You know, it would give them thought. People will come in and talk to them, and they'll see things in America like, wow, this is what we've been missing. Maybe, this is we're missing. Wow, we want this. We want elections. We want a young leader. You know, so yeah, I mean, they're no threat to us. Cuba's no threat to us. Are you guys
Fair
still
enough.
there? Okay.
Yeah, we're here. I mean, we're we're just we're in rapt silence at your perspective on this. Let's take a little tour around the world then, because I do think foreign policy is important.
It's going to be
grilled
Super
important.
important.
Definitely.
Heidi Wellman. Yeah, I grilled Heidi Wellman on it when I talked to her, and I'm think it's only fair that that I should grill you a little bit too. So we've covered Cuba. What are some other things that you think we should, that we could be doing differently, or any other insights you have in any of the other sort of corners of the globe?
Around the world and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. Like, I don't like I don't like the immigration policy where, like, the guy from Detroit who lived here for 30 years got sent back to Mexico, like because his age, he was too old for the DACA program. Like, how cruel is that, right? We're supposed to be America, the land of compassion, and we're going a guy who never had any criminal record, right? Raised a family 30 years, and he gets deported. Never lived in Mexico. Hasn't lived in Mexico for 30 years, and he gets deported because of an age limit. I think that's pretty petty, and it's so un-American. Like, come on, like, we're America. Everybody looks up to us. Everybody depends on us to be leaders. You know, people depend on Massachusetts, U.S. senator to be a leader. Always has, and we need some change. We need government shut down. I mean, we need. Come on, man. We could do better than this.
Do you support amnesty in general for the quote unquote dreamers, or is this a special case because the guy had been here for so long?
I think case by case, but it was just so like it was so petty, like, and that's what you need a president to step up for, like, hey, not just to be mean all the time, but you need a president to step up as a leader and bring us together sometimes, like. We're all in this together. This, united we stand, divided we fall. And leadership, like, it's the war back and forth, Democrat, Republican. Where's the compassion? Like, where's the leadership? If I'm elected U.S. Senator of Massachusetts, I'll take that as an honor, and I'll be forthright, man. I'll be a leader.
Let me ask you about, because I want to drill down on this. I appreciate what you say about leadership. I appreciate what you say about a case-by-case basis. But I think people want to know about specific policies. So let me ask you about the younger dreamers. I understand this guy was here for 30 years, but there's about 800,000 people who are, I guess, temporarily protected under DACA from deportation.
This is one of the biggest issues in mass GOP right here. So,
all right, so then weigh in, man. What are your thoughts?
You know, immigration. America is full of immigrants. I don't have a specific policy. I'm not no immigration expert, but you have to show compassion. People look to America. I understand that a lot of immigrants commit crimes. A lot of Americans commit crimes, but believe me, man, we have to look out for people. People look. America's supposed to look out for people who are less privileged in the world. That's where our blessings come from, and we must not forget that. And the problem can be solved. They have, case by case. So I, I'm not an immigration expert. So, but I just think we need to really we shouldn't be stereotyping all immigrants because we're a nation of immigrants and that's how this great country was built.
A writer, a viewer writes in to say, quote, "He's not a battery changing expert either." Darius, is that your smoke alarm that I hear, or is Rachel's that in your house?
Oh, I don't think I had the echo thing going on. I think I got that under control. Now everything is nice and quiet. It's just me, you, and
I'm
Darius.
quiet too.
So,
I didn't hear anything either.
Okay, so I'm gonna think the echo was Rachel's fault, but the smoke alarm has got to be you,
boy.
Darius.
Okay.
They're making fun of you. Some people, some of the viewers are making fun of you for it.
My smoke alarm.
Yeah, do you not notice that periodic beep in the background?
It's probably my headphones about to draining the battery of my headphones. My battery.
No, dude, that's a smoke alarm.
Trust
me, man. I know that sound. Yeah, did you just hear it? So I had to inject a little bit of levity in here because people were mentioning it, and I'm just trying to give you a hard time. I hope you understand.
No,
it's in the spirit
man.
Of
one thing I want
fun and freewheeling interview.
I want all the listeners to know, man. The Massachusetts U.S. Senate race, as U.S. Senator from Massachusetts, I mean that is just like one of the most respectable positions out there, and that's why I agreed to do this interview. Because I feel that I could be a good U.S. Senator for all of Massachusetts. I feel that I can challenge the senator in every community, because, we can do better. I see some of the things going on, with the opiate abuse and with gun violence among young people. We've had 5 teenagers shot and killed in Boston since Halloween, and it's just this is the greatest country ever. Boston's one of the greatest cities in the country, most historical. What's going on? Let's solve these problems. Let's bring them to the forefront.
What do you think could be done to solve a problem like that? A problem like young people being shot in, inner city crime.
We must.
How do you tackle a problem like that?
It'll take a group. But if you look at the entertainment that some of the young people, some of the music, the radio stations, 10, 15, 20 years ago, the radio stations were locally owned. Now they're nationally owned by big corporations. Who are those corporations accountable to? The things that they put on the radio and you'll never hear Motown music anymore. What happened to that music? But you'll hear rap music, and it's not always, it's more entertainment, media ownership, and just how normal incarceration has become in the country. It's become like a lifestyle. People imitate incarceration lifestyles. And and we just deserve better.
Well, it's interesting. You talk about incarceration and imitating a certain lifestyle. I find that it just kind of goes along with expectations, not only within the community, but from people who are outside of it. So I feel like it's we got to chip away at that. Actually, we just got to get rid of it altogether. I mean, we can't. But it's we have this whole culture, all these different nonprofits and these activists, and it's all built around
Poverty.
these expectations. Yeah, exactly.
It's built on
It's
profiting off of poverty, and
and
they
so it's these expectations about what people of color can do, what
yeah,
they will do, what they won't be able to do, and
yep.
it's really weird and bizarre for me
It's
because
weird. It is weird. It's like what
because
are you
it
talking about? Frederick Douglass was a slave, came here in
right
1838, right? And New Bedford started caulking ships, right? He didn't have no
he was
iPhone.
brilliant.
He didn't have no iPhone. He didn't have no Samsung. But you know what?
Well, I mean,
But he ended up.
think about World War II though, and you had many blacks who went and they fought for the ideals of truth and justice and liberty and freedom, that they, ideals that they couldn't fully enjoy, or couldn't enjoy it at all right here at home. And these and help bring about the civil rights movement, and then that influenced women and that influenced other ethnic racial minorities, and so you had these incredible figures, these incredible people who did really everything that to move this country
and
forward.
and and
And
they
so
and they had
and then
like
the idea that now people of color, black people in particular, are victims, and that's all they can really be. That doesn't make any sense to me. I
you
mean,
have to.
that doesn't it doesn't. I mean, that's just ridiculous. That's absurd. And yeah, so I'm glad you talked about this culture of expectation, and we
And that's
have
why.
to address it.
Okay.
That's why. Go ahead, Ted.
All right. Well, here's some contrarian perspective. Another viewer writes, quote, talking point, talking point, talking point. We've been having the same discussions since the 70s and 80s. Kind of a downer, but I think it's a fair perspective. Let me ask you for a translation. Translate the rhetoric into something practical. How does a U.S. senator attack this paradigm and change it?
Paradigm towards which subject?
This paradigm, so a celebration of poverty culture, some sort like
Well,
the
see, I'm into like I'm really in the books right now and the history of like entrepreneurs in America, people who had nothing and just made something out of nothing, like the Wright brothers. The Wright brothers were bicycle repairmen. They had lost all their money down in North Carolina and moved the operation back to Dayton, and they were fixing bicycles to fund their airplane exploitations. Henry Ford was someone who dropped out of grammar school and didn't start Ford. He didn't start Ford Motors till he was 41. Uh, it goes on and on. I read books. Abraham Lincoln's another one. When Abraham Lincoln ran against Stephen Douglas in 1858, nobody thought Lincoln was going to be the next. Everybody thought Stephen Douglas was going to be the president. And Abraham Lincoln stood on his principles, on what he believed in. He had lost 7 elections before he even got to that Senate race. And he wasn't rich. He wasn't the most experienced, but he stood on principle. So, it's America, man. Anything can happen if you have the passion and you have your heart in the right place, no doubt.
okay, but
Well,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I wanted to say something. With all due respect to the listener, I'm glad. The comment. I think we all appreciate it, but I have to say that this culture of expectation and how these nonprofits that are devoted to poverty and for me, and it sounds like both of you as well, like they've become like too big to fail. Um, I don't think that that particular conversation has been going on since the 70s or 80s. I do think that this is really talking about something new, and I think that when you challenge people and say, well, Black people can be something other than victims,
That's
you get a whole lot of people who don't like to hear that.
and that's what my
So
that's what my Senate campaign's about. I want people out because all you ever hear is Republicans are racist. Republicans are racist, right? So I want people to look at me and say, that he is a U.S. Senate candidate. He's an African American man, and I want them to listen that we can grow home ownership, entrepreneurship. Our voices deserve to be heard. We're not just rappers. We have contributed to the progress of this nation too. And I want people need to see, like, win or lose, they need to see an African American Republican U.S. Senate candidate. And that's how I feel. I think that it would bring value to Massachusetts. That's what
You know,
well,
I
I
want to
think
bring value.
education is really the key. Education's the key to everything. It really is. I mean, I remember just growing up, and I don't remember anyone ever having a different one set of expectations for me, and another set for maybe someone else. Um, in Latin school, we were all expected to excel, and if we didn't, we weren't going to last. And it's a school that's modeled on it's a classical education that you get. Really, I think that if you equip people with a solid and sound education, that's something that they take with them. No one can take that away. You give someone an education, you open up their eyes, you expose them to different things. That person then will be able to really survive even in the harshest of circumstances. That person will be able to flourish in the best of circumstances. I mean, I think that education really is key.
okay, but what does that
I
mean
really do.
okay, but what does that mean in the context of a U.S. Senate race? Education by example? Or, I mean,
By Okay, Ted. Okay, and in 2016, 70% of the state legislature didn't have a Republican opponent. 5 out of 9 congressmen didn't have opponents. So there, we didn't have a race. Those districts didn't have a debate about the future of those communities. And when people go to the polls, basically on primary day 2016, the race was the whole race was over in Massachusetts. So what the Republican Party needs the one thing about the U.S. Senate race, the U.S. Senate Republican primary is that this ballot will be in all 350 communities. And if we have a diverse array of candidates, we should have the most interest because there's nothing bigger than who is going to challenge the senator. I mean, we cannot just, we have to be able to challenge her on urban policy, on policy in Boston, Brockton, Lawrence, Lowell. We need a candidate who can do that. We can't just have them saying, oh, it's just another white guy, he's racist, and let that be the race. We have to challenge them on policies because we want the best for our community and we want Massachusetts to be respected, and that's our opportunity. We could get our respect on in September. Yeah.
do you think that there are a lot of people in Lowell, for example, who would look at, let's say, a guy like Jeff Deal or a gal like Heidi Wellman and say, just another white person, white Republican, probably racist?
Not probably not Heidi, but someone like Deal, who hangs around with people who are known for that type of thing, I guess maybe. But can you?
Well, wait a second. That's a very provocative statement. What do you mean by that?
I mean, like,
Could you be specific?
I don't know, just like you just in their pictures, the pictures aren't like diverse, like, and well, the guy that was talking about the Metco gorilla or whatever. I don't know, something like that.
I happen to know Jeff personally. I've known him for a while. I don't think he's
No, I'm
racist.
not saying he is. I didn't say that, but like,
Right. Sure. No.
I,
And to be fair, you didn't. But I just, what I guess what I would maybe want to put out there is that, unfortunately, because Jeff is white and he is white male, Republican white male, and he does support Trump because of the media, and then you have people like Elizabeth Warren, who hopefully won't be our senior senator after this election. Um, and then you have people like Representative Catherine Clark, and they kind of almost like I feel like they're working in tandem with the media to really kind of push and perpetuate this narrative. Um, and so I
I
think
think
that's
I,
unfortunate that
I,
some
a
people
lot.
might unfortunately think that, but Jeff really, he doesn't have a bigoted bone in his
Of course
body.
not.
He's
I'm not. No,
wonderful. He's
Yep.
wonderful.
But I'm just saying. I'm just saying how when the media get. You know what I'm saying?
No, I
When
and
the
I
national.
hear you.
You know what they're gonna do. But see, I can challenge them in different ways. A lot of people in the urban community wouldn't mind voting Republican, but we never give them any reason to vote for. We never give them any reason to come out the shadows and take a Republican ballot. And hopefully, that's what I want my campaign to be.
Okay, so I'm going to pick up on two things here. One, Rachel mentioned Catherine Clark. I think that's interesting. Catherine Clark's Republican opponent this time around is a guy named John Hugo, a white man, white male Republican. But he's running on a platform kind of similar to what I've heard you talk about, Darius. He wants to decriminalize marijuana. He thinks that too many people are incarcerated for drug crimes, for nonviolent possession, not possession with intent to sell, but just like recreational possession. Um, he he's very much sort of a normie. Dems are the real racists. Republican. Um, definitely not a racist guy, but I mean, is it just a foregone conclusion that he's going to be able, that let's say Catherine Clark is going to be able to demagogue him because he's white?
Unless you have a candidate at the top of the ballot who can can say, hey, it's all about the messenger, and what we need is somebody at the top of the ballot that could take the lower ballot to victory. Like Rick Green here in the third district. Rick Green's a good candidate. He's an entrepreneur. Rick Green really should be the chairman of the party. So he's a good candidate in the third district. But if you don't have a person who can challenge people at the top of the ballot, challenge them in Lowell, challenge them in Springfield, challenge them in Lawrence and Roxbury and Dorchester, then all the lower ballot people are going to get eaten up. But if you have somebody at the top of the ballot that can bring some people over to our side, maybe, or at least give an effort, then we don't know what's going to happen. That's what democracy is about. Like, you guys don't even understand. Like, the you the Republican primary for U.S. Senate, like, everybody will be looking at those numbers to see, will the Republicans have more numbers on their primary than the Democrats? I think that's possible. That's what I'm looking for. I want to get the numbers up and have Massachusetts voters' votes be respected again. You know, Anybody who wants Massachusetts needs to be respected. Now, we don't even have a voice on what goes on in Capitol Hill. Our Congress people don't talk to the leadership there. and we don't really have a voice on anything going on there. So if we could shake it up, man, we could do some big things, Massachusetts.
I would say that for me personally, the most encouraging thing that I heard you say tonight on this race issue, just to stick with this for a moment, wasn't when you affirmed a moment ago that Jeff Deal, when you agreed with Rachel when she said that Jeff Deal doesn't have a racist bone in his body, and it wasn't um, the callbacks to the establishment of the Republican Party, which was obviously, I mean, I do think it's kind of ridiculous that the left has been successful in demagoguing the Republican Party as a racist party, considering the weird, foundationally anti-slavery party. But really, the thing that encouraged me the most was when you said about Trump that you didn't care, because I have this idea that we make way too big of a deal out of this concept of racism. Like it's some kind of it's like an unforgivable thought crime.
Oh
Um,
no, people use it. They pimping. They're pimping racism. See, what policies are you offering the inner cities? What are you? Are you working to get money for these kids in Fall River and New Bedford? Are you working to have them
and
working this
and
summer?
that's just the thing. And if you're screaming and yelling and ranting about racism, then you don't really have to, right? I
No,
mean,
no. People
remember,
go, yeah. They go, yeah, yeah. They're all race. I'm not even going to think about listening to the Republicans because I already know they're all races. I
right? And
only
you
have to
remember,
listen.
I told you that I shared that I asked Elizabeth Warren when she was running against Scott Brown, what would you do to level the playing field? What would you do to bolster education throughout the state, so that really people, regardless of city or town, zip code, they had a chance to get that sound foundation that I also referred to earlier. And she could not answer. And I find that sad that she had no thoughts on education, that she had no, even like, I would have settled for like some quick talking points. She
Well,
had nothing. And I think that I thought that that was very telling, and I also thought that that was very sad.
Rachel, could you explain to us what's going to happen at the convention? What's about to happen?
Oh my gosh. Well, you mean this upcoming state? I don't know. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball.
But
I
do
hope
you
people are
are you
civil.
guys are you guys caucusing in Boston and everything?
Well, I certainly, I'm certainly going to do what I can to be present. I was at the 2010 state convention. I helped work the floor for the late, great Kamal Jain, who is just an incredible, remarkable man, human being, ran for state auditor. And then in
Oh,
2014,
you. Oh, I know him. Say his name again.
Kamal Jain, and he was just a wonderful person. And he
I
was
know him
he was
from
very
Lowell. Lowell
right.
Works.
That's right. Excuse me. Yes, absolutely.
I used to talk.
Yeah,
I used to
absolutely.
walk and
You would
talk with
know
him
him
all the
very
time.
well.
Yep.
He
I,
was
I used to.
really very much. He was very much ahead of his time. Talking about transparency and putting, the operations of the state, the office of the state auditor. Online, and now everyone's talking about transparency and moving everything online so that people can see where money's going, and it's whether they're just talking about it, or whether it's actually been done. I always think, well, Kamal said it first. That's the first I heard it. um,
Wow.
and and then in 2014, I proudly seconded the nomination for Mark Fisher for governor of Massachusetts. So, I'm heavily invested in the Republican Party, um,
That's good. I like
but I'm
the.
also
I think the Republican grassroots has more enthusiasm than the other side, and I think the media
perhaps,
under.
I
I
hope.
think I think the media underreports it, but I've watched it because last year I attempted to run for third district against Nikki Saugus, and I made my
Okay.
rap. I spoke before the third district caucus at Groton Dunstable High School as a delegate for Donald Trump. I spoke for 2 minutes, and when
Oh,
I
that's
spoke to the
wonderful.
and when I spoke to the crowd, every chairman in the third district, every Republican chairman in the third district was there that day. And when I spoke about Republicans needing to, uh, you know, compete in urban areas, I was getting signatures, and I had a line up to the bleachers. People like that. They want us in
But
the
it's
cities.
well, but then they got to go there though, right? And so, as heavily invested as I am in the Republican Party, I would say I'm even more invested. Being a native Bostonian, um, even more, involved and emotionally attached to the city and wanting to see it. Uh, really thrive in a way that I don't think it's doing now because we suffer from a lack of perspective, lack of diversity in terms of perspectives. Um, we can't all be rowing in the same direction, and so we really do need. Um, various points of view. We need a push and pull, and that's just not what we have. I do hope that people are civil at the convention. I hope that we can celebrate the energy and enthusiasm that I hope to see over the course of this year. I don't know. We'll see. There were some rough spots at the last state convention, but I'm hopeful that we can really just really kind of ramp up um, the energy and really make people want to go out there and work and fight for something different. It can't be, with all due respect to Charlie Baker, it can't be just about him. While I mean he's obviously an important part of this, I also want to see and shout outs given to other candidates. And Ted, I have to thank you. I have to. It's a John Hugo. I have to give him all of my apologies because the other day I was saying, "Oh, we got to get someone to run against Catherine Clark." So we have someone. So forgive me, Mr. Hugo, and I hope to meet you. And I certainly. I, very enthusiastically, support your efforts to give people a choice. So, uh,
Well, I
definitely
have
have
a
to give my apologies there.
well. No, I'm sure no apologies needed. It's early days, as Mr. Hugo said to me himself. I have a lengthy interview with him, almost an hour-long interview with him posted on my YouTube channel, and I encourage anybody who's interested in the 5th District, if you live in the 5th District, or even if you don't, to check that out. Um, and speaking of lengthy interviews, we've been going on for over an hour now, but I do want to hit at least a couple other things before we wrap up. So,
Let's do it.
Darius, let me ask you, how many signatures do you need to get your name on the ballot?
You need 10,000.
Yeah, 10,000. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, do you have is that something that you need volunteers for, that you need help with? Do you want to put out a call right here on this platform, as small as it is, to for people to help you out with that, or have you got a machine in place to
No,
accrue
I'm
those signatures?
everything I do is grassroots. I'm funding this campaign myself. And if anybody want to get in touch with me, I'm at Darius Mitchell for U.S. Senate Facebook, or you can hit my personal account, Darius Mitchell at Facebook. We're on Twitter at Lowell Counselor, who wants city council. That's been my Twitter handle for a number of years
A
now.
while. Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
wow, yep, yep. So we've been, yeah, we didn't just get here. We've been fighting for issues that, about around the country. We want the country to be the best country it can be. And we're on Instagram, Embargo Communications, and you can just look me up and say hi, or what you agree with I said, what you disagree, and we are looking for campaign staff. If you want to be a part of a campaign and learn on the job, hit me up. Ted.
Yeah, no, that was
He's just
I
taking it all in.
I'm taking it
yeah,
all.
no,
You say you're a little group,
no,
but you guys cover you guys cover stuff like you guys had the first U.S. Senate polls, and you got I'll read. I
I thought
read.
that
I read. Yeah, go ahead.
I thought that was like a general you, like a you to everybody. I didn't. Were you were you offering me? Were you offering me a campaign spot, or was that a general you?
To you and anybody else, let's do it. Let's get together. Team of rivals. You know.
Team of Rivals.
You know
Doris Kearns Goodwin.
that's
Very
my
good.
favorite
Very
book
good.
right there. You know.
Bringing people together
Is that right?
for a common
Off,
goal.
yes,
Meet
and
Elizabeth
Lincoln
Warren.
and then after Lincoln lost that Senate race, everybody thought he'd be gone. He got invited to Cooper Union on his way to New Hampshire to visit his son up at Exeter. And the president's story is people always say, yeah, he freed the slaves, but the life he lived to even get in position is just amazing. And anybody who hasn't read Team of Rivals by Doris Kearns Goodwin, and you want to read, it's not just about Lincoln. It's about uh, Governor Seward from New York and Governors Chase from Ohio, and they all had aspirations. They were all big time millionaires, and President Lincoln, this little prairie lawyer, came out of nowhere, and it's a great read.
Rachel, do you want to plug before we wrap up? Do you want to plug your TV show,
So sweet.
social media?
Well, people can certainly they can hit me up on Facebook. I'm there, and Bostonian Rap has a page, all of its own. Bostonian Rap at Bostonian Rap, written as one word, is also it's also on Twitter, and then you can also find me on Twitter. My account separate, although there's a lot of sharing between the two accounts. But my personal Twitter line is at Rachel Miselman. And I want to encourage all the Republican candidates, really just so important that you get out there and you reach out to as many people as you can, because I really do think that there's a chance to not only give Elizabeth Warren a run for her money, but also to maybe even beat her. And the only reason why I say maybe even beat her, I'm not being negative, but it's just, I mean, obviously it's not going to be easy, but I do think it's possible. And I actually remember her saying, when talking about Scott Brown at this same event where I asked her about education, she said, it's going to be a tough slog. It's not because you enter a race and very very tough, very difficult, that it's not one that you can't ultimately win. I think a lot of people, even if they're in Warren's ideological camp, they're tired of all the noise that she makes, because very little of that noise is about Massachusetts. And I mean, we're so beyond, I think, what she's doing right now. I think that people are at a point where they really do need to know, what are you going to do for me? Like, what, my standard of living. It's I people it 2016 was really, I think, a very special time in politics, and I think it's a turning point, and I think that a lot of politicians, including Warren, have to really kind of get with it.
I just hope, Rachel. I just hope voters.
What is that? Wait a second. Is somebody laughing? I thought this was a beautiful speech from Rachel. I was really touched.
No. He wasn't. No, it's no. I had no. It was beautiful. No, it was somebody doing something else in here.
I hear
But
somebody. It sounds like somebody in the background is laughing at Rachel's beautiful speech.
at something else that was going on online. No, no, but no, no, but I find that Massachusetts voters they don't believe in their power. Like I tell everybody, and I'm laughed at all the time. Like you're
Like I was
Massachusetts,
just
man. You
laughed
can.
at. No, I'm kidding.
You wasn't laughed at, Rachel. Of course not.
Kidding.
Of course not. Yeah, man. So that's
Okay.
But
that's it.
I think it's a race that can be won.
Definitely. It has to be a race, though. We have to make it through the convention. Candidates have to get
True.
on the ballot. Mark Fisher had a battle to get on the ballot, so you
Oh,
don't know.
I remember that well.
So you don't
Oh,
know what's gonna. You don't know 15,000 to speak at the convention. That's
another question I wanted to throw in before I forget. Darius, are there any plans prior to the convention for you to debate any of the other uh, primary candidates? Are there going to be any debates at all? Are you guys setting anything like that up? Is that something that's in the works? Or
I'm not sure. Most candidates, I guess, are working to get delegates for the convention in April. So, but I'm up to anything. If Red Mass Group wants to get something together, I'm all in. We can talk about the
okay,
issues of Massachusetts.
a
I'm
Red
all
Mass
in.
group hosted debate. That's something I'll have to talk to Patrick about that because
That would be you guys. That would be right there, and we could put it on public access. Like we could do it. We could do a Facebook one live.
we could do it. Maybe
Uh,
we could do it on Rachel's
But
show.
yes, Boston Neighborhood Network, Bostonian
so,
Rap on Boston Neighborhood Network. Yeah,
because this is
absolutely.
we can't just have a 2013 special election type of year where 19% people vote, and or even 2014 where 30% vote. We need people to come out. It don't matter who you vote for, come out and vote. We can't be. We're Massachusetts. We got to put up a better effort. That's my opinion.
This is. I feel like there's something exciting brewing here. So Rachel, what if we if we got something like this off the ground? Could I co-moderate?
Do
We
it.
could do a
Absolutely.
Red
I
Mass
would love
group
that.
/ Bostonian rap
Oh
Senate
Absolutely.
man.
candidate debate.
Oh
Absolutely. I
man.
would love that. Certainly I've had issues with one or two candidates, but at the end of the day,
It's okay.
when I put on my hat as, a journalist, it's about, okay, I want people to be well informed. And I can't stress this enough. I want people to know that there is a race. I do not, under no circumstances, do I want Elizabeth Warren just to
We got to set the tone.
just to kind of right. I don't want her just to walk to victory. If she wants victory, she's going to have to fight for it. And
Yes.
so certainly, um, any and all Republican candidates are welcome to come on my show. I would love to have that debate. And I think it's important that people come into Boston. And I'll say this, over the years, I've gone to different parts of Massachusetts and to many different parts of Massachusetts, to many different types of events, supported candidates at all different levels, running for local, statewide, because I want people to care about Boston, and so I figure, I need to care about other parts of the state. But I'm still waiting for people to care about Boston, and so while I think some strides have been
I
made,
I care about
it's
Boston.
still pretty. I know you do. I know you do.
You already know.
I mean, right. I already know, but I need to see that from the other candidates. John Kingston, I know, actually has a long history, from what I've heard, of coming in to, like, say, for instance, Roxbury and Dorchester, and doing a lot of community work. But I want the other candidates to come in as well. I'm not saying that they don't care, but what I'm saying is they gotta come in to show they care. and I really think that that's important because this is such a key critical race, and I think that that's
In
one
Boston,
of
Boston's not just another city. Boston is, like
it's
the
the
met.
motor of New England. It's the
It's
capital of
everything,
Massachusetts, and it's the motor
everything.
of New England.
And
That's right.
anybody could be in Boston. Anybody could be anything. So that's why it's so disturbing to me when I read the newspapers every day about 20-year-olds being shot and teenagers
Oh,
being
wow.
shot, and it shows that something's broken. There's a lack of leadership. Something's
Right, and
broken.
so right, and so why not, have the Republican candidates come in to
Yes, oh,
Boston,
that would be
uh,
great.
you know, moderate, co-moderate, and we talk. Okay, so, um, early December, there were some teenagers who, there was shooting, triple shooting in Mission Hill, the Mission Hill neighborhood of Boston. What are your thoughts on violence, gun violence, and what would especially in urban areas, and what do you see as uh, solutions
Solutions.
or remedies to this problem? And I'm sorry, but they do have to be able to answer that. You do, and they do too. So I mean, it's we're not
Because
running
we
just to
see it
run. We're
around the
running to
country.
win.
Like, yeah, in Massachusetts,
Well, right.
senator is a national leader.
But we can lead the way. But we can
That
lead the
we
way, like you
that's right.
said.
Yep, yep. Let's do it.
Is it safe? Is it safe for us to be brainstorming these questions with Darius though? I don't want to create a Donna Brazil situation here, Rachel.
No, no, but
No.
seriously, uh, let's put something together. I'm all for it because the issues are big issues. They're just the future of the country depends on Massachusetts having a strong senator. It does. I don't, you know, it just
Do you
does.
want to do you want to give a I don't know, a 60-second final appeal? Why should people vote for you before we close out the stream?
I just want to say that I feel that the nation is in a fight for survival, and I might not look the best on paper as a candidate, but I've been around Massachusetts politics, and there's issues that I've worked on for a great many number of years, and we could just do better. We can grow, and you know infrastructure. I always was for a low natural rail, and I believe in Massachusetts being just this great state, and that's why I put my name out there for this. And every voter in Massachusetts should be able to pick a Republican ballot or a Democratic ballot,
So
and should have somebody who.
I'm sorry, guys. I got cut out there. Technology.
But
That's all right,
Um.
but Rachel, you just interrupted Darius's closing statement. He was giving
Oh
a really
no.
heartfelt appeal. So you
it's
know what I
okay.
think this I think this is revenge actually from when Rachel was laughed at.
No way Rachel was laughed at. But everybody, ev- lately, the urban communities have been left out. We don't even have candidates on the ballot. If I'm on the ballot, every urban community will have a minority on the ballot, somebody who understands the issue, who has worked hard, and really wants to represent them a lot. And so just think about it on the way to, throughout the campaign. Just remember that I'm earnest and I'm trying to do good for the state, represent the state honorably.
It's interesting that you would use the word earnest because one of the viewers actually wrote in and said exactly that. I remember I'm looking for his comment. I can't find his comment now, but he used the word earnest. So I
And
do
what
want to
fashion?
something to the effect of this guy seems really earnest.
I am.
I don't know.
I'm really naive. I'm really
Is there
naive. I don't know if that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing to be naive because I just believe in the nation. Like how I grew up. I grew up in the 70s and 80s. And as a kid, I never had to worry about shootings and stuff like that. We all watch the same TV shows. We listen to the same music. And that's how it should be now for young people. it should be innocent. You know, everybody should grow up in it. A kid should grow up in innocent. They shouldn't have to worry about these problems that people are dealing with now that we've been talking about.
The kid should be allowed to kid.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to correct myself. He actually, so this person, that's why I couldn't find it, because they actually wrote in and used the word sincere. So it seems really sincere. So yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of synonymous with earnest, and I can third that sentiment. Darius Mitchell, I really appreciate you giving us your time. This is not an endorsement from me, but I will say that I do feel like you're a very sincere guy. A lot of interesting things to say. Rachel Miselman, thank you so much for joining us as well and lending this live stream a touch of class and professionalism. I'm going to close it out there.
I just want to
Finally,
say
I want to
thank you for Red Group for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I mean, our pleasure. The honor's all ours. We're trying to talk to as many candidates as we can, running up to the elections. Sort of a project to help the voters get to know the candidates and vice versa. Obviously, you get a little bit of feedback from people, as you found out tonight. I don't do. This is the first time I've ever done this as an impromptu live stream, but that's the way that Darius Mitchell rolls. He just dives right in, and I appreciate that, and I respect it.
Yep, and I got to hang out with Rachel for an hour, too.
That's
cool,
right.
Yeah.
But no,
which is definitely a privilege.
Yep.
Aw. All mine.
So this is the Rachel Miselman fan club here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Very honored.
So I think we covered a lot of ground. I think this has been a really interesting discussion. Some kind of provocative things were said. A lot of very insightful things were said. I guess I don't know. How do you wrap up? Rachel, you tell me how to do this. How do you wrap up a live show?
Well, it's been a real pleasure having you, and I think listeners learned a whole lot. And I would love to have you back on and to share some further thoughts. And I wish you the best of luck in your race.
Thank you, Rachel.
Oh, Darius, one last thing. Before we kill the broadcast, can we just get you to say Darius Mitchell and your #1 source for news and commentary is redmaskgroup.com?
My name is Darius Mitchell, and my #1 source for media in Massachusetts is redmaskgroup.com.